My husband sent me exactly one text. I want a divorce. Honestly, it sounded more like a power outage notice than the end of a 6-year marriage. He thought I'd crumble, but too bad for him. I had a truth ready that would flip the whole game. Curious what that truth is? Let me take you back to the beginning. I was sitting in my office, staring at endless spreadsheets. Being an accountant had already turned me into someone obsessed with numbers. Every detail had to match, and even a $1 discrepancy gave me a headache. But that morning, what really split my head open wasn't a balance sheet. It was a text. My phone buzzed, and I assumed it was a payment alert or a client sending over documents. Nope. The screen lit up with one blunt line. I want a divorce. Just 4 words. No emojis, no question marks, not even a follow-up sentence. I swear, even a delivery failed notification from a shopping app feels more heartfelt than that. Picture this: 6 years of marriage, thousands of shared meals, countless arguments over which sofa color to buy, and he ends it all with a single SMS. I just sat there, speechless. And then I started laughing. Laughing because I felt like the main character in a sitcom, trolled by the writers at the last minute. Seriously? I muttered. 6 years of marriage, and you think it ends with a text? If there were a gold medal for fastest breakup execution, he'd win it without competition. My job makes me nitpick logic, so I thought, okay, let's treat this like a marriage equation. His final answer? Divorce. But his method of solving? Completely wrong. Any math teacher would have slapped a giant red X across that. The funny thing is, my reaction wasn't devastation. Shocked? Yes. Heart-heavy? Absolutely. But at the same time, I found it hilarious. Who really thinks one text can sum up an entire shared life? Breaking up over text is like ordering pizza and forgetting to pick the toppings. I put the phone down and asked myself, why did he choose this way? Too much of a coward to say it to my face? Did he think it would go down easier if I only saw the words and not his expression? Or was there some reason he needed a safe exit strategy? And honestly, in that moment, rather than crying, I felt this strange calm wash over me, like spotting a massive error in the books. First, you're stunned, and then you can't help but smile because finally, the truth is right there in front of you. I didn't text back. I leaned into my chair, arms crossed, and replayed the past few months in my head. The vague signals, the half-baked answers. There had to be a reason behind that message, and I had been holding on to a truth of my own, a card he never saw coming. If he thought 4 little words would make me crumble and beg, then he never really knew me. Trust me, the truth I was about to drop was the one thing guaranteed to make him break a sweat. And what about you? If one morning, the person you've shared your bed with for years suddenly texted, "I want a divorce," how would you react? Fire back a reply? Stay silent? Or sit there like I did, laughing bitterly while getting ready for the counterstrike? Tell me in the comments. I really want to know. If the "I want a divorce" text was a slap out of nowhere, the truth is the cracks in our 6-year marriage had been showing for months. I was just too buried in spreadsheets, too unwilling to trust my gut, until the signs were flashing right in my face. Grant, my husband, had always been the laid-back type. He was the guy who'd stroll into the grocery store in a faded t-shirt and shorts without a second thought. But suddenly, a few months ago, he started showing up in crisp, ironed button-downs, practically drowning himself in cologne, so much that I couldn't stop sneezing. When I asked, he just laughed. "I want to look more professional for my gym clients." Sure, sounded reasonable. But I knew damn well no trainer needs half a bottle of cologne just to coach someone through a squat. It wasn't just his appearance, his attitude shifted too. Grant used to linger around asking about my workday, even pretending to care about how I balanced the company budget. Lately, every answer boiled down to 2 words: too busy. Too busy to have dinner with his wife. Too busy while glued to his phone in the bathroom for over an hour. I swear, if that phone could log overtime, it would have demanded a paycheck. And it wasn't only me noticing. One evening, when I stopped by a mutual friend's place, even Grant's close buddies dropped hints. Maybe he's just bored with the marriage. They said it casually, like it was nothing, but to me it sounded like the soundtrack of a horror movie. Bored with the marriage? That was basically a confirmation of every awful gut feeling I'd been trying to ignore. I know, by this point, many of you are probably thinking, clearly he's cheating. But back then, I didn't jump to conclusions. I'm an accountant. I need proof, clean records. You can't just declare a balance sheet wrong because of a couple of stray numbers. That said, Grant practically turned himself into evidence some nights. Like the time he claimed he had a late shift at the gym, then stumbled home at 2 a.m., shirt wrinkled, with the faint scent of cheap perfume on his collar. Definitely not mine. His excuse? One of my female clients wore way too much perfume, must have rubbed off on me. Honestly, I wanted to print out a fragrance receipt and make him sign it. Another night, he staggered and drunk, mumbling, "I only had a few drinks." A few drinks that left him collapsing on the couch, snoring like a chainsaw. If that's what a few does, then he must have been knocking back rocket fuel cocktails. The thing is, every time I tried to probe, Grant would just laugh it off. "You're too sensitive. Every guy wants to blow off steam once in a while." Sure, sounded smooth, but my gut told me this wasn't just blowing off steam. Still, I didn't call him out right away. I chose silence, observation. Partly because I wasn't about to explode without solid evidence, and partly because I wanted to see just how busy Grant was going to get. In my line of work, there's a saying, discrepancies will reveal themselves. I believe marriage worked the same way. Honestly, I was torn between sadness and amusement at his little performances. Sad because the man I'd spent 6 years with thought so little of me. But funny too, because he actually believed he was hiding it when the signs were practically glowing neon. If I handed this case to a bunch of 8th graders, they'd solve for the missing variable in 5 minutes flat. After getting the "I want a divorce" text, I didn't cry, and I didn't call up my best friend to vent. I kicked back in my chair, crossed my legs, and thought, if he wants to play this game over text, then fine, I'll play by his rules, just a few levels higher. I replied simply, "Okay, let's talk honestly tonight." No emojis, no exclamation marks. That was it. But I knew Grant probably shivered a little reading it, because he was used to me either being furious or silent. Rarely this. Polite. While waiting for evening to come, I started working on my counterstrike. I didn't dive into his phone, didn't install tracking apps. Honestly, after years in accounting, I know social evidence holds up way better than any data file. So instead, I started visiting, chatting, and quietly listening. First stop, the neighbor downstairs. The moment she saw me, she leaned in and whispered, "Your husband's been coming home real late lately. I've heard footsteps at dawn more than once. Just the other night, I even saw someone drop him off." I forced a smile and replied, "Yeah, must have been extra shifts." In my head, I checked the box, witness number 1. Next came a familiar colleague. Over a casual lunch coffee, she mentioned offhand, "Hey, I ran into Grant at a fitness networking event the other day. He was bragging like he was single." I was shocked. I laughed it off on the outside, but inside I was cheering. Now this was prime social evidence. The more I talked to people, the more pieces fell into place. Grant showing up with potential clients. Grant complaining that his wife didn't understand him. Grant acting like some gentleman who was basically single. And none of this came from texts I snooped. These were straight from people who knew him. At this point, if he wanted to deny it, he'd have to deny the entire community. Honestly, the whole thing was as sad as it was ridiculous. Picture me sitting there, listening to people describe my husband as some fun-loving bachelor, while I was the one at home washing his sweaty gym clothes. Classic sitcom material. The audience knows everything, but the main character plays dumb. The more I heard, the clearer it became. Grant wasn't just gearing up to leave a 6-year marriage, he was auditioning for the role of free man out in the world. And me, the one he thought he could dismiss with a text, turned out to be the person holding all the data. I started piecing together all this information like balancing a spreadsheet. Testimony from the neighbor, friends, coworkers, it all lined up. And while Grant thought he was controlling the narrative, I was setting up for a surprise audit he'd never see coming. That afternoon, I looked in the mirror, fixed my hair, and smiled. I no longer saw myself as the victim of a 4-word text. I was the one holding the script, and tonight, Grant would have to face a truth he never expected. And what about you? Imagine your spouse texting you out of the blue, saying they want a divorce. Would you break down begging? Or would you sit back, collect every shred of social evidence, and wait for the perfect moment to flip the game? I chose the second option, and trust me, the real fun was only just beginning. That night, Grant walked into the house like he'd just won Most Eligible Bachelor of the Year. Shirt untucked, collar wide open, reeking of cologne stronger than the tester counter at Macy's. He looked at me with this smug little glint, like he was waiting for the big scene. me sobbing, begging, maybe even collapsing to the floor and clutching his hand, whispering, "Don't leave me." Sorry, but I wasn't auditioning for that movie. I calmly poured myself a glass of water, then pointed to the couch. "Sit down." My tone was so flat, it was like I was asking the gas guy to wait while I signed a receipt. Grant hesitated for a beat, then sat. He crossed his arms, took a deep breath, and delivered the line I bet he'd rehearsed in the mirror all week. "I think we should get a divorce. Between us, there's no love left." If this were a movie, the audience would probably see this as the big, emotional twist. But to me, it sounded like the final slide of a PowerPoint presentation. Big font, zero substance. I gave a slight nod and asked bluntly, "You really want a divorce?" He nodded, head tilted down just a bit, voice steady with false confidence. "Yeah. Living like this, it doesn't mean anything anymore." I stared at him for a few seconds, then took a sip of water. My heart didn't shatter the way he probably expected. Instead, I felt amused. The man who once promised to stand by me, even if the numbers never balanced, was now trying to end 6 years of marriage with a soap opera line. And then I dropped the one sentence he never rehearsed for: "Good. Because here's the truth you don't know. I've already prepared for a divorce. I'm just a few steps ahead of you." If there had been a camera in the living room, the audience would have caught Grant's face freezing like stone. His eyes went wide, his mouth slightly open, like a student realizing the exam had already happened, last week. "What did you just say?" he stammered. I smiled without offering any explanation. I simply set my glass down on the table, leaned back in my chair, and let my eyes say what words didn't need to. He wasn't the only one holding the reins in this story. In an instant, the controls slipped right out of his hands. The man who thought he was calling the shots suddenly realized the game had already been scored. In the previous round. You know that feeling, right? When someone is convinced they're the director, only to find out they're just an extra in someone else's script. That was the exact moment. I looked at him thinking, "Welcome to the real game, Grant. And trust me, you have no idea what's coming for you." Grant just sat there, his face drained of color, like I'd suddenly started speaking an alien language. His forehead creased as he scrambled through the script he'd rehearsed, the one where he was the one leaving first, but I'd just torn it to shreds right in front of him. I leaned forward on the table, locked eyes with him, and said, "Do you know why I'm this calm? Because I've known you've been cheating for a long time, Grant." The words landed heavy, like a hammer. He jerked back, eyes darting everywhere, like a kid caught hiding a failed test. I gave a cold little smile. "Don't worry, it wasn't because I snooped through your phone. I didn't need to. Your friends did all the talking for me. A few slips here and there, mentioning you went to networking events but showed up with female clients. And people at the gym saying you bragged about being basically single." Grant opened his mouth, then shut it, then opened it again, like a fish flopping on dry land. He was about to sputter out, "That's not true," but I raised my hand to stop him. "Don't bother. I've let you perform for months, and while you were acting, I was preparing." I stood up slowly, walked to the bookshelf, and pulled out a neat stack of files. Setting them on the table, I flipped through page by page, my tone no different than if I were presenting a financial report. "Here's the private account I opened 6 months ago. Here are the documents for the condo, under my name only. And these are the papers for our joint savings. I've already withdrawn my legal share and moved it into my personal account. Everything is clean, stamped, and accounted for, not a penny out of place." If there had been an audience watching this scene, they would have been laughing out loud. A wife-turned-accountant flipping her marriage into a personal audit, laying it all out like a perfectly balanced spreadsheet. I looked him straight in the eye and wrapped it up. "You want to leave? Perfect. I've already prepared. This house is in my name. I've withdrawn my share from the joint account. All you need to do is pack your bags." Grant sat frozen, his face drained white, fists clenched tight. He took a deep breath, trying to fire back, but not a single word made it past his throat. The control he had clung to since the start of this conversation shattered, leaving only a stunned man staring at the wife he thought would be begging and sobbing. I leaned back, arms crossed, as if this whole confrontation were just a meeting I'd secured victory in from the very first slide. In my head, one sarcastic line nearly slipped out loud. "Note, client Grant is officially insolvent." Watching him, I didn't feel triumphant or gloating, I just felt relieved. 6 years of marriage, and at last, I was the one grading this final exam. And what about you? Picture this: your husband sitting across from you, convinced he's in control. Then you lay out every piece of evidence and the airtight plan you've been preparing. Would you let him keep talking? Or would you shut it down with a simple, "All you need to do is pack your bags"? Grant was still frozen, but I could see him scrambling inside. His eyes darted around, his lips trembling. I can change. I was just being impulsive. 6 years together isn't a joke. His voice shook like a student begging the teacher to accept late homework. I smirked. "Oh, then let me give you one more truth, to complete the combo." His head lifted, a flicker of hope in his eyes, only to burn out instantly when I delivered the line. "Actually, I already told your family about your affair." If we hadn't been in the living room, I would have sworn I was watching a slow-motion replay. Grant's face shifted from pink to pale to beet red. His whole body went rigid as his voice cracked. "What did you just say?" I rested my arm on the chair, calm as ever. "That's right, your mom knows, your sister knows. I didn't need to hack your phone or hire a PI. I just shared what your friends, co-workers, and neighbors had already said. That's all." Grant's mouth opened to protest, but then he froze. Maybe right then he remembered his mom's odd looks lately, the way she'd stare at him across the dinner table, equal parts pity and disappointment. Or the times his sister would casually drop lines like, "You got too much free time, Grant. Maybe focus on keeping what you already have." He had brushed it off, thinking they were just quoting random marriage articles. But no, the truth was, they already knew everything. I went on, my tone steady, almost like I was reading out a report. "Your mom tried to defend you at first, but when she heard from your own coworker that you were bragging about being basically single, she went quiet. Then she looked me straight in the eye and said, 'If he doesn't know how to keep what he has, don't let yourself be the one who loses.'" Grant dropped his head, his whole body seeming to collapse in on itself. That was the moment he realized he had no allies left. Even the woman who had spoiled him most had switched sides. I sat still, just watching. It was like seeing a sandcastle get washed away by the tide. Every excuse he had prepared dissolved into nothing. "Ever wonder why people have been looking at you differently lately?" I asked, fighting back a smile. "It's because they already know. You're the only one who hasn't realized you've been exposed." He buried his face in his hands, mumbling, "No way. No way." But the truth was laid bare, undeniable. I stood up, picked the folder off the table, and tapped it lightly against the chair like a closing gavel. "Grant, you've got nowhere left to hide. Not at work, not with your family, and definitely not in this marriage." He sat there, exhaling like a balloon losing air. That smug spark in his eyes from earlier tonight was gone. All that remained was a trembling man who finally realized the stage was no longer his. And me, for the first time in months, I felt weightless. After that night, the fallout came faster than I ever expected. Rumors of Grant's affair spread through his company like a storm, ripping across the office floor. One employee spotted him with a special client. Another overheard whispers that I'd already told his family. In no time, the shiny reputation of model manager he'd worked so hard to build crumbled to dust. Co-workers now looked at him with a mix of pity and mockery, while his boss quietly reassigned projects to others. Anything to keep the drama club away from the brand. Even his drinking buddies, the same ones who cheered him on to go wild, started vanishing one by one. It's easy to holler at the bar when times are good, but when the scandal broke, nobody wanted to get dragged down with him. His phone notifications slowed to a trickle. I even overheard that one of his closest pals blocked his number, afraid of getting caught in the blast. Grant was forced to pack his bags and walk out of the apartment he once imagined he'd leave on his own terms. And me? I stayed. I flung open the windows, cranked up my favorite music, and soaked in a peace I hadn't felt in years. No more keys jingling at 2 a.m., no more cheap perfume lingering on button-down shirts. Just me, a clean apartment, and a new life, lighter than a summer cocktail. 6 years of marriage, and I finally understood. Freedom isn't found in some club. It's in the courage to walk away from a rotten relationship. A few months later, right on cue like some cliché movie plot, Grant texted me, short and pitiful, "I miss you. Can we talk?" I looked at the screen and laughed. The same man who once declared there's no love left was now begging for another chance. Instead of replying to him directly, I opened Reddit and wrote a post. My husband once texted me demanding a divorce. I hit him with the truth. I'd been ready to leave him for a long time. Now, after losing his reputation and being abandoned by his friends, he's begging to come back. Should I give him a chance? Hint, I'm sipping a cocktail with a much better man right now. The post blew up. Hundreds of comments poured in. Some told me to block him immediately. Others trolled, saying, "Send him back to the gym. At least there he knows how to lift weights, since he clearly doesn't know how to lift a marriage." I laughed through every line, realizing I wasn't alone in this. The lesson I took was simple. Never believe a 5-word text can bring someone down. Sometimes, it just exposes the sender's true colors and ends the game faster. And me? Instead of being the loser, I was the one closing the story, with a smile. Thank you so much for listening and staying with me until the very end of this story. Your support is what keeps me going and inspires me to bring even more drama, equal parts intense and witty. Don't forget to hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so we can enjoy the next stories together.